I just want to welcome all of you officially to the Fulfillment Formula, where you can achieve with ease. And today is day 2 for your journey. And again, we'll be talking about mindset and energy principles to make sure that you feel motivated intrinsically and that you have structure to fuel your next steps and flow through your day. So as a reminder, yesterday we had you identify the priorities for your life at this point to help you know where you can channel your energy and not let that negative self-talk get in the way. Today, we'll dive deeper into the energy behind what drains you and what you need to embrace instead so you can move forward, but in a really intentional way. And again, ultimately, we just want to be able to shift you from a mindset of force to one of flow, where you're in alignment with who you are and you can move toward your deepest desires with daily actions. And when you do that and you feel in alignment, that's when you get results and feel fulfilled. So specifically for today, like I said, we're going to dive deeper into what is holding you back. Basically, the root cause of what I believe holds many high achievers back. How to understand and honor the season of life you're in. And then we're going to embrace that information so you can really thrive. Because when there's less resistance to what's happening in your life or what's occurring in general, you experience more movement. So in fact, if you can understand what season of life you're in, we can show you how to operate and create a path forward that really helps you have more long-lasting success. And that's what we want for you, right? So you can have these strategies for success for the long term. So going back to yesterday again, we discussed how you approach goals. And some of you said you had a hard time setting goals, or you can set goals and you even followed through on them, but you felt anxious. And then many of you said that sometimes you are calm and directed, and other times you felt anxious or motivated, or unmotivated, I should say. So it sounds like everyone here is a human. Yay. Yay us, we're all normal. So I thought I'd capture these 2 images, which I know really oversimplify what we're getting at, but I felt like these could capture how you might feel going through your day as you approach your goals. And on the left, we have someone who's excited and focused and self-directed, obviously motivated. And on the right, we might have that person who's anxious and stressed and has those racing thoughts. And like we said, many of us show up differently in different situations. So I'm curious if any of you had some insights about why you might be either feeling focused and self-directed at times and then other times anxious. So in particular, when you're considering your goals or your ideal results, or if you went through the video yesterday and you weren't here and you might have gone through the wheel of life and rated certain items 6 or lower, I'm curious, what was coming up for you? Why do you think you were worried and stressed in some cases, and then in other cases you weren't? I know, like I said, I've experienced both of these, and what I realized is that in the cases where I was stressed, I was either trying to control everything or I just kept waiting for my circumstances to change. So then I thought, okay, once I achieve this goal, I'll feel happier. Then I also noticed that in those cases, that when I was showing up anxious, it was like I was trying to prove something to other people. Back in the day, maybe when I worked in corporate America, I was always trying to show how hard I was working. And this wasn't conscious. I was a hard worker, so I thought I was doing the right thing. But I noticed sometimes I'd stay at the office a little later and always had work to get done. But I would pick that over doing something healthy for myself. If I was being honest, I think it was just to show like, yeah, I'm a hard worker, but to show others and myself. But that way of showing up in my life just wasn't helping me. It wasn't helping me get to my desired outcomes, and it wasn't helping me feel happier, which is really the whole point, right? We set goals to feel happier. And ultimately, I know we may have been conditioned to think we should be a certain way, focused, hardworking, and getting results. But ask yourself, how can you achieve any of your goals given the associated feelings with always working hard or that stressed out feeling? So what I love to do next is, if you're open to sharing, is just to go deeper into understanding the thoughts that might lead to these emotions and behaviors, right? The thoughts, like, what are you saying to yourself on your journey when you're trying to go for your goals and you know you can do it because you've gone for certain goals and you've achieved them. So what's coming up? Hi, Aim, what's going on? I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear her? Oh, did you want to mute? I don't know why we can't hear you. Do you want to put something in the chat and then maybe we can help? So that's okay. Okay. Yeah, so I thought we could just share what's coming up, like why. I typically say, what stories are we telling ourselves? Because I think they're technically stories, right? About why we're showing up the way we are. When you know you have these goals. I'm happy to share, but I feel like I talk a lot, so I figured I'd let someone else share. Mike? Can others hear him? This is so weird. Renee, you spoke earlier. Do you mind? Oh, Shelvana.
You hear me?
Yes.
Oh, that's weird. Okay.
What is going on? This is crazy. Gosh, I don't know. I'm looking. It says you're unmuted.
Yeah. How about now?
Yay. So Mike, yeah, what do you tell yourself about why you can't go for certain goals?
You can't hear me, can you?
Yeah.
Oh, you can. Okay. Hold on. I'm stuck on some other screen now. I think part of it for me is that I just have, whether it's relationship or physical environment or whatever. I mean, whatever. There's some personal growth. I mean, I know they're all out there, but I really don't have goals in them. I just have there's things I want to do, but I've never I don't say this is my goal. And I do that on the health side. But I really don't do it in other parts of my life, which is not very smart, but I don't. I'm kind of winging it, I guess, which causes chaos, honestly.
So what I'm hearing is, yeah, in the health area of your life, you may set a goal, but you're not doing it in other areas of your life. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So why do you think you can? Like, what thoughts do you have about why you can in the health area?
It's kind of just come naturally in what I'm doing. I started running, and I now have a goal of running a marathon. And so it just became a goal, kind of naturally from running, and a couple things like that. So, but it wasn't like I set out, hey, I'm going to run a marathon. It it came out of just starting to run. So, and that's kind of the way the rest of it is. It's just like, hey, there's things I know I need to do, but I just kind of take care of them almost when it's an emergency, which is too late. So,
Right. Well, something that we can learn from this area of health where it does work for you is it sounds like you're taking small steps. A reason why we don't go for certain goals, well, we might put them out there like, hey, I'm going to start my own business, or hey, I'm going to quit this job and try for another job, is that feels daunting and overwhelming. Whereas when you decided to run a marathon, which seems daunting and overwhelming to me personally, you didn't say, I'm going to go do that. You started with a small step.
right.
So there's a thought you have of like, that's too big. Like when it comes to your job, or I don't know what other life areas you're focused on, it might just be like, this is too much. It's too big. I don't know what to do. So do you see how those thoughts
Yeah.
stop you?
Yeah. That's very much what goes on.
Okay. Yeah. Well, now you can start seeing that, and that's important so you can make new choices. And we'll
Thank you.
talk more about what's behind it. Thanks for sharing, Mike.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to share? I mean, I know I have things that I've often said to myself.
I could share.
Hi,
Can you hear me now?
I
I'm on
can.
my phone. I'm on my phone. I don't know what was happening with my computer, but it's interesting. This actually really connects with what Mike just said. When you started the session, you said you called us overachievers, and like I think going to what you're saying about beliefs is that I think that a lot of what stops me from doing what I'm doing right now in my life is I don't think of myself as an overachiever anymore. I think of myself as a way underachiever. And then I keep telling myself that. And then I stop, then I don't do things because I feel so bad about myself and not finishing stuff. So I was like, wait, I'm an overachiever. And I mean, you know my story and stuff, but like I just think that's really interesting. I didn't connect all of that. And I relate to you, Mike, because I think one of the reasons like I could run a marathon is because I have confidence in that area. Like I know I'm not going to fail. I mean, I might fail, but like that's just one section of my life where I'm like I do it enough to where I'm like I don't think of myself as a bad runner. But like when I'm going to like write or do something more intellectual right now in my life, I'm like I'm like frozen, and it's because I don't believe I'm going to be able to finish it.
It's the
So
thoughts. Yeah.
it's the thoughts, yeah. So anyway,
Thanks for sharing that, Amy. Yeah. And we're going to dive deeper into a lot of what you're saying. But again, anytime we're doing something new, even if you were a high achiever, I like to use the word high achiever. There's some of us that are overachievers too, but like, even if you did that in the past, or you were that type of person in the past, then when we set out to do something new in our lives, oh my gosh, you think, well, that's not me anymore. Or anytime you do something new, beliefs come in to protect you, right? Oh my gosh, this is dangerous. You don't know what you're doing. But with awareness, hopefully, that you could see it's just a thought you're having, and our thoughts aren't necessarily true. And beliefs are just thoughts we've had over and over again.
mm-hmm.
So my hope is, as we go through the rest of today, you'll start to see the root cause of some of this, and then you can make a new choice. And when I work with my clients, we really dive into this. We talk about negative self-talk, and we won't have enough time to dive into all of that. But I do want to hit on some of the stories that I also hear people say. Thanks for sharing that, Amy. Shalvana?
I was just gonna mention, I realized sometimes it's easy, like society tells us certain things are goals, kind of like a marathon, but even just eating a well-rounded, eating lunch every day, a healthy lunch every day, how many Americans say that they do that, right? And that can be an achievement. And some people with that idea go on to be Michelin chefs, right? Because they're practicing different lunches and all of that. And we don't necessarily give ourselves credit for making sure that we eat a well-rounded lunch every single day. So making opportunities for like celebrating smaller things that might not be as big as a marathon might also help.
Small wins, celebrating the small wins is huge, and that can keep our energy flowing. But Shalvana, and we're going to hit on this in a second too, it's how society defines a goal, right? Or a win. It's only after you ran the marathon or after you started the business. No. How about I got a client today or I had a job interview? So that's important too. So thank you for sharing that. I also want to share some other stories that you might be telling yourself, see if they sound familiar. Again, so think about your goal, whether it's just to feel more mindful, if it's to feel more present. It could be a feeling, or it could be something like, I want to be healthier, or I want to start this new project. So now I'm going to share some thoughts that might come up and see if any resonate with you. And I've heard my clients say this, and I know I felt it at times too. They say things like, I ask for help and no one is supporting me at work or at home. Meaning sometimes we feel like we can't delegate. Or we're not even used to asking, if we're being honest. Why would I ask for help? Maybe you say something like, hey, I set my boundaries, but I have to keep sharing them, and you don't feel heard. Or maybe you think, gosh, if I don't do it, it won't get done, or it won't get done well. Maybe there's a goal you have that you're really excited for, but you say, I don't have the time to do it, so I can't take care of myself. So I don't know if any of these are resonating with you, but maybe it's just, I feel anxious. This is reminding me of some of the ones you just said. Like, I feel anxious about taking a next step because I can't see the full picture of how to get where I want to be, right? Whether it's personal or professional or something with your kids. And that's what we talked about yesterday with that quote I love. If you could see your path clearly laid out before you, it's somebody else's path. So we feel anxious when we don't see the whole path, the whole picture. See some of you nodding. Or I don't feel like I can be my authentic self. I'm afraid I'll be abandoned or rejected. I'm stuck and I don't know what I want. And when I want to take a step forward, I doubt myself. So that's similar to what we've been talking about. Maybe you want to have better habits, but you're just so tired by the end of the day that you just don't go for it, or your habit becomes a glass of wine instead. Or you might feel like I'm just disappointing people at different times. And it could be your boss, it could be a romantic partner, could be a co-parent. So you could see all these thoughts where they go. Amy?
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that I tell myself is that, like, just for example, I was going to try to do a writing class this fall, and I like talked myself out of it because like I didn't have time, you know. And I mean, somebody could look at my life and say that for sure, build that case, I think, but the reality is, and I've been paying attention to it more now because I am sad that I didn't do it. But like I waste a lot of time, you know, like, I mean, it, and I feel like if I would be writing in this, you know, doing this class instead, it probably would open up time for me in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Yeah.
just really, you know, again, like I'm learning from it, but it's just really interesting because what I tell myself too is that it's going to be like bad for my family, you know, because like I'm not going to be as available and all this kind of stuff, rather than like, oh, well, I'll actually probably be happier and nicer.
Yeah, Abe. Shalvana's asking if you're writing a thesis or dissertation, but I
No,
don't
no,
think so.
no, no, just
Yeah.
like creative writing. It's like a creative writing class, you know, and to your point too about the like it can be just, you know, like a lunch, you know, where I feel like for me, it's just like even if I just show up for 10 minutes at my computer, like that, I need to start looking at that as a win because, you know, it, I start to feel like, oh, if I haven't sat down for 2 hours and done something super awesome, then it doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just I think I guess it goes back to sort of the beliefs too. Just like I honestly will I will believe and tell myself, convince myself that like, you know, everybody's gonna be like pining away for me if I'm on like a class for 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like anyway,
Mhm.
so
So I want to address something quickly there, Aim, and then I'll go to the next slides because I think it'll help you see more clearly even what's happening on a deeper level.
Mm.
And I know you're super self-aware, so you know this, right? We're just bringing it more to the surface. Well, we're bringing it more to the surface. But this goes back to energy management. So you telling yourself, I don't have time, then beating yourself up about it or not taking it, that's all diminishing your energy. And you hit it on the head when you said, wow, maybe if I actually did the class, I would feel happier, more excited, and better able to be there for my family. And I do know your story, and one would argue you don't have a lot of time, but how can we make sure you're using the time you do have intentionally? And that's what we're going to dive deeper into. So I'm glad. And you haven't, if anyone hasn't had a chance to watch yesterday, I invite you to watch that. And it's fine that we're doing this first, actually perfect. But if you have time, then check out yesterday as well. But what I start to notice about a lot of these stories is that they're really thoughts, right, that lead to feelings where we can be people pleasing at times, right? Thinking we're trying to be there for everyone else. And ultimately we're just not expressing our truths. So that's just interesting for us to look at. With that said, hopefully you can see the screen again. Like I've been saying, I feel like these are symptoms of something deeper, right? And what I've found, some typical root causes of these stories are what you all said. Society's definition of success. We want to honor what it looks like to be successful. And that means we're writing the big thesis or we're doing X, Y, and Z versus I wrote a chapter today. I journaled for 5 minutes. Also, it could be maybe there's some childhood trauma that's at the root of this. And it doesn't even have to be big T, it could be little t. Maybe there's some nervous system dysregulation where we're not taking care of ourselves. Or simply there's just past conditioning from our original family that's impacting us. Maybe it's a lower sense of self-worth. Or I know many of you are self-aware, but maybe we're not pausing to process what's really happening and then integrating our learnings. And what I see often a lot is that we're just not conscious about our patterns, or our daily routines and our tasks might leverage certain qualities more often out of habit or association, right? Like we pick up the phone a lot because that's what's easy for us to do. Or it could be the way society has told us that doing is really important, right? That's what we seem to, at least I feel like in our American culture, that's what happens. And I often have talked about how sometimes our masculine energy of doing is valued over our feminine energy of who we're being. So I'm asking you, are you really trusting yourself? And if we're being honest, are you really being loving to yourself? Because someone who trusts and loves themselves, they set boundaries with conviction. They make time for themselves and for self-care. They also accept that things aren't going to be perfect. And they trust that it'll still work out. And they do activities and things that really align with their values and their purpose, right? They feel safe to give themselves that breathing room, to feel their feelings, get clear on what they want, and then honor what they want. So as I'm saying this, you probably hear it and go, yes, we know this, but why can't we change? And if you've done coaching or read books and listened to podcasts, you've probably seen some progress. But I want to keep taking it deeper and look at why it could be so tough to change. And it could be, I'm oversimplifying it, but it's because you're coming from a place of fog, fear, obligation, or guilt. I know in my life, I've had thoughts that led to fear, obligation, and guilt, and that was tended to be my first and automatic reaction. For example, I feared that maybe if I had a challenge, I couldn't find the solution, or maybe I wasn't even smart enough. At times, I come from obligation where I say, gosh, I need to take this certain step because it was expected of me. Or I came from a place of guilt where if I didn't do something or say yes to someone, I'm hurting that person. And I'll be thought of as I'm not a nice person. So you can see my people-pleasing side was coming out. And many of my clients and I talk about feeling fog or this sense of anxiety and doubt, which again is just coming from that past conditioning and thoughts maybe you've had that you weren't smart enough, or you should be nice, or you should be showing up a certain way. But that is impacting the decisions you're making today and your behavior. So what I wanted to share is how several years ago, I had a friend from college sent me this article from the Harvard Business Review. And she thought it'd resonate with me and my clients. And the title was, "If you're so successful, why are you still working 70 hours a week?" And it really hit home with me. I see some of you nodding. Even though I'm not working 70 hours a week these days, it just explained how we could be showing up as actually insecure overachievers. So instead of high achievers, we're really insecure overachievers. And more specifically, that insecure overachiever is chronically overworked. And this could be too if you're at home taking care of your family. You could be doing a lot for them and not making time for your professional life or creative life, and vice versa. It could look like being anxious, overreacting, constantly racing thoughts, doing all the time, and saying there's no end in sight. So I started sharing this with other people, especially my clients, and they could totally relate. And I knew for sure because I could relate because it was so me. And I just want to share the definition of it, see if it resonates with any of you. But it's described as someone who deep down feels insecure about their abilities. And for most of us, there's almost like this intangible quality about our knowledge for what we do. Even if you're starting something new, like a business or a new relationship, you've had relationships before, you've worked before, right? So you have knowledge. But we can show up as constantly improving mode. Martha Beck talks about this, where you're improving energy. And I recognized I was doing that. She says you could also show up and I'm here to share my gifts and talents. And once I heard that distinction, I was like, yes, I want to be that person. But again, I just want to reiterate, you can look confident on the outside and be confident. But if you're in this constant doing mode, you just might want to ask yourself, why? Like, is that really confident? Are you trying to prove something? What I thought was interesting too is this article talks about how there's many insecure overachievers in industries such as marketing, advertising, law, consulting, accounting, and medicine. Many of my clients come from those backgrounds. I know academia too. And I just want to share some more descriptions to see if it resonates. So some people described it as when they're in this mode, it's like I become a robot. As I have more demands put on me, I just keep going. And you think, oh, I'll take a break later, and that later never comes. And why does this happen? And why do you keep doing it? Because even after you go on vacation or life slows down in general, like when you have a global pandemic, we still keep going, even though we know it benefits us to slow down. And here's what the description says. Another great description. It says, insecure overachievers are exceptionally capable and fiercely ambitious, yet they're driven by a profound sense of their own inadequacy. This typically stems from childhood and may result from various factors, such as an experience of financial or physical deprivation, or a belief that their parents' love was contingent upon their behaving and performing well. Now, this isn't to blame or shame our parents. They really did the best they could. But I was curious about my own childhood and how certain situations started to condition me to be very vigilant. And then I started learning about the nervous system and how it reacts to certain situations. Now, these reactions we have and responses might have actually been developed in childhood, but cues from today, such as constant stress or maybe a lot of meetings or taking care of other people, can bring on that sense of vigilance. And again, it looks like what we talked about, the anxiousness, the overreacting, maybe racing thoughts. It can be also physical, like you're not sleeping, digestive issues, hard time focusing. And what I learned is that when we're in doing mode all the time, it helps us avoid our feelings. And okay, this is okay because it's part of your mind's job to be looking out for danger. And I'm just saying, yeah, Shalvana, you feel like you're running on a script, right? That dialogue.
Rosie, I have a question for what you're saying about the you said like childhood things. What was what you said about the deprivation?
It could be physical or financial deprivation. So
Which makes you
so maybe there's there was poverty or physical abuse, or even parents making you think that you have to behave a certain way to get love. I'm not saying they thought that. Your parents might have fully loved you, but because of their own trauma and wounds, right? They kind of develop this perfectionism, which then gets put onto you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that making sense? I'm not sure if I answered the question, because like, how does that, what happens is you feel inadequate. If we were oversimplify it, you feel inadequate. And as a child, you have limited context for the world. So you interpret what you're experiencing in life as like, I'm inadequate, something's wrong with me. Now I have to be very vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so what I was going to share is that then, you know, again, it's our mind's job, specifically the unconscious mind, to interpret stimuli that's coming in, whether it's internal, like an emotion, like sadness, anger, anxiety, or if it's external, like a stressful situation. And then you decide how to react. So again, the mind's always looking for danger and stress to prompt us and say, okay, we need to protect ourselves. If you've received coaching or gone through therapy, you might know this, like, yeah, that's how the mind works. That's normal. But when it's too much or it keeps happening consistently, if you've been through a difficult period now in your life as an adult, even getting your dissertation or a family situation or a toxic work situation, such as, like I said, a stressful job, right? Maybe feeling rejected, even going through the global pandemic. We don't manage those stressors, we become overstimulated. And our mind, brain, and body become dysregulated or out of balance. So we can dive into all of this. I am mindful of the time. I think we're going to keep going, and if we go a little later, hopefully that's okay. And then people, if you have to drop off at 1:45, then you could listen to the recording. But I want to make sure this is making sense. what happens is our nervous system has two parts, one that manages the stress, the other part that helps us calm down and relax. But if that side that's always managing the stress is constantly on because we're being vigilant, we might be in constant fight or flight mode. And if you experience any trauma, like I said, as a younger child, your brain feels like it's happening again. And it gets hard to be in that rest or relax mode. So do you notice how it might be tough for you to unwind after work? Or maybe after you've been with your kids all day? Maybe it's hard to let go of an emotion when it comes up. Like if you've been at a family gathering or with a friend and you feel triggered and you just cannot let that go. That's because you've been on that high alert. And for me, this started showing up in other ways. I want to share this because I feel like I've heard other clients experience the same thing. I started to develop a sense of misguided loyalty and commitment. Are you raising your hand, Sean? Yeah. The insecure overachiever's sense of commitment leads to this extreme conformity and the normalization of unhealthy behavior. So at work, this could look like, wow, these people are succeeding and they're doing all this work. So you feel like you have to keep doing it too. And that's when burnout happens. Or what's even more interesting to me is that maybe you become a leader at one of these organizations and you unconsciously repeat the patterns you learned. And you're thinking, well, you just need to keep working harder to make more money. So I know I wanted to break this cycle, and I knew I needed to come up with another way to show up in my life. And I know I had a choice of how I showed up. As I said earlier, it could be by proving myself or saying, I'm here to share my gifts and talents. So I decided I wanted to be that person who says, I'm going to share my gifts and talents. Again, that's easier said than done. But knowing I wanted things to be different for me, and then also eventually for my clients, I started laying out a better way. I started by going within, getting clear. And then I stopped acting a certain way based on what others thought I should do. So again, it really started with just better understanding myself and basing my decisions on what was going on in my life. And then I learned what I needed to do. When I followed this path and this approach, I knew I could preserve my energy and channel it in the right places. And to me, that's what being aligned means. And I know I've been talking about this feeling of aligned success and with yourself, but it's like when you align and connect with who you really are, your energy starts to shift. That's what I was saying earlier, right? Like you honor yourself and you take that writing class or that bubble bath or fill in the blank. Your energy shifts and you can relax a little bit and you exude this unstoppable energy that's magnetic to opportunities and it inspires people around you. So I like to say you start to attract people and situations that align with your deepest desires. It's like you don't even have to try that hard. You're just being more you. And hopefully you can start to see why getting results isn't about following someone else's path. It's about embracing your authentic self and enjoying every step of the journey along the way. So I know that was a lot.
I wanted to say something about what you just said. I love that, what you were saying about how, because like even in talking about, shifting in this way, it feels like I can't do that. That's going to be really hard. Like, all the negative stuff we're talking about, everything that comes with doing the other things too, it's like, but the idea of, I just felt so encouraged when you just said, when you're, would you say the difference between when
Sharing
you show up with your gifts and talents?
I had to learn this back in advertising days. Proving myself energy or sharing my gifts and talents. This
But
one's
the
a
fun
lot more fun.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm thinking, and a lot easier.
So much easier. yeah, my signature program is Be Perfectly You. And I always say, what could be easier than being you? It's so simple, but we've been conditioned to not be ourselves, right? So,
Right. And I think I just relate to that so much because when you were saying the whole thing of, um, childhood trauma or whatever, like where you feel like if you're not doing something, whatever, then you're not going to be valid or something. And I think I noticed one of the reasons like why I didn't take that class, which going back to that again, is that like it's not only thinking, it's the belief is more that I'm not going to be contributing enough and then I'm not going to be wanted.
that sense of rejection or worse, abandonment.
Yep. Yeah, which
No.
is like that's like the deeper under the deeper under the deeper, right? Like it's not just the boundary, it's the fact that if I actually set the boundary, then people aren't going to need me and I'm going to be
Or they'll need you, but you're rejected or abandoned. So then what? Right? Or
right.
maybe it is that, Amy, that they won't, you find out, and I'm going to say this more at work than I know your family needs you, but at work, right, we could be replaced. And suddenly it's like, let's prove ourselves so that no one can replace me. And it's this crazy cycle. Even if you want to stop working at that job, it might be hard to detach yourself from it because
Totally.
it gives you such a sense of worth and value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Thanks for sharing, Amy. So hopefully this next part will be helpful. And we're transitioning a bit because yeah, like you said, we could go really deep into that, but that's what I work with my clients on a deeper level. But what I want to also share is to better understand your path at this point. A really helpful tool that I've used on my journey and I share with my clients is to understand what stage or season of life you're in. Now, I first learned about this from Martha Beck as well. She happens or used to be Oprah's life coach. I always think that's kind of a fun fact. But what she shares is that it's a good reminder that without fail, seasons like your life will change, right? We have the weather seasons. It's the same thing in our life. But understanding these seasons or cycles of change, or what season you're in, and how to leverage each one will help you get better rewards in your life. And specifically what I mean is if you could get aligned in this way where you understand where you are in your life's journey, it can help you to start doing, I call it the right things to help you move forward. I say right in air quotes because there is no perfect right thing, but it's the right thing in the moment for you. Otherwise, you start expending your energy in the places that don't work for you, and it actually works against you. So I want to explain these seasons with this graphic, and we're going to go high level and then I'll go deeper, and you're going to start to see hopefully where you might be in this season. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with you can share if you could stay a little longer, because I just realized we're at time, but I think this part will be really interesting for you as you move forward with the rest of the sessions this week. So you start typically with a catalytic event. I can never say that word, catalytic event, but something happens, okay? Then there's the death and rebirth. So you're in square one, where you might need to let go of an old identity. So anytime a major change happens in your life, and it could be the pandemic, something that we all went through, or it could be something specific, like I'll share in a second, my divorce. Your identity has to let go of an old model, an old way of thinking and believing. Then you go through a period that might feel really chaotic, and you move into square two. And this is where your dreams start to come in. You start to imagine a different future. Then you go to square three, and this is where you might enact the different future, right? You can start taking steps toward it. Then finally, you're in stage four where you can perfect it. And then, of course, another wave comes in, right? There might be another catalytic event. You go through these cycles all over again. And each time you go around, you go forward, you start to see there's a rhythm to the change. And Martha Beck talks about that when she stopped fighting that, her whole life became doable for the first time. And once I started seeing the cycles, I felt the same way. So this is a little bit deeper, and recognizing where you are in the process and accepting it can be a great way to inform how you want to move forward and how you can thrive in the present moment. So I'm going to share this graphic and actually two different ones where we can dive in. But again, this is the overall flow. There's some comments in magenta that I think are interesting that give you a little bit more context for each square. But again, I'll just share quick examples from my own life so you could see how maybe this shows up in your life. So when I got divorced, that was my catalytic event. And that led to a death and rebirth where I was exploring dating and new career options. And for my career, I decided to go into or explore 3 different options. One was interior design, another one was owning a bakery, and the other was being a life and career coach. Now there's a lot of dreaming and scheming going on until I landed on being a coach. And that's when I moved into square 3, what I call the hero or heroine's journey. I started my courses, I received 2 certifications, and I was ready to quit my day job in 3 to 6 months. But it was 2007 and the recession hit. So I ended up staying in my day job for another 6 years. But that was longer than I thought. I checked in with my accountant every 6 months to see what we could do, and it ended up being 6 years. So we don't know how long these cycles will last. But finally, I left my agency and I was ready for what I thought was full flight, the promised land, square 4. But I was really still in square 3, that heroine's journey, where I kind of picture it as climbing a mountain. And when I thought it was almost at the end, meaning I felt like I saw that white flag close to the summit, I left my agency. That's when I found out my dad was diagnosed with ALS. And our family went through the toughest time of our lives. My brother would say that I got a PhD in coaching back then because I was using all of my tools. And then next, and I'm going through this part quickly, although it was devastating, we lost my dad about a year later. So then we obviously went through a grieving period, but eventually did move into square 4 after we saw my mom was doing okay as best as possible and our lives started to settle down. I recognized I was going into 8 years of coaching and I had the strangest feeling when I was in square 4. People would say, "How are you doing?" And I'd share that I'm really uncomfortable because I'm not stressed out. I wasn't used to this feeling of calm and ease. I only had 1 job instead of my 2. My family was healthy. I enjoyed my friends, working out. It's just such an unusual feeling for me. So life was flowing and moving forward, and it felt really good. So next, what I want you to check into is to see what phase you might be in right now at this point. It could require some rewinding. Like when I first heard about this, I had to go back. It's like, oh wait, let me go back to my divorce. It could be it could be the global pandemic. It could be something more personal. Now, if you've worked with me before, you might have already identified a catalytic event, but hey, something else might have happened since then. You made a big decision. And although these arrows go in this order, clockwise order, as we know, life isn't that perfect. It ends up where you might step in the next square, go back a little bit and move around. So I just want to make sure that now this I know is a big chart. We're going to break it down, but please look on the left side of each square where it says what the symptoms are. And as you review the symptoms, think about what season you're in and consider if your goals that you laid out yesterday or your priority areas still align where you are in this cycle. So again, I'll share a quick overview. This is square 1. Maybe you feel like you're between 2 worlds. Maybe you're trying to get back to the past. You're feeling a little confused. I'll be quiet while you read some of the other ones. Maybe you're starting to go into square two where you feel hopeful or you're dreaming. And you're grieving a little bit less and ready to try something new. Maybe you're in square three where it feels like a really daunting goal. And you feel a little bit impatient, like you want to get some, you have all this stuff you want to do and get done and be in. And
Work
you
and play like a dog.
say it again. Work and play like a dog.
dog.
Are you familiar?
No.
I was gonna say, I don't know if your doggy works that hard, but
Yeah.
yeah,
As he takes a nap right here.
I know. That's why I was saying most doggies might not, but we feel that way. I'm putting the play sheets in the chat because I just realized that might not be in there, but I want to make sure you have it. And then square four, where you're finally ready. Like, I can take a breather. There's a rainbow after all the craziness. And you've moved past maybe some of your shadows. Your dreams are coming true, and you only need some slight changes. So I'm going to dive deeper into each of these again. So square one. Remember here, there can be this affirmation you tell yourself. I don't know what the hell is going on, and that's okay. That somehow felt comforting, especially when you're going through a new change. People felt this during the pandemic, and you might feel it as you prepare to be an empty nester or any new phase in your life, looking for that new job, if you're moving someplace new, if you're getting over a breakup. And if you're in this stage right now, I just ask you, could you be okay with ambiguity here? Could you be okay with not having all the answers? And I know that's easier said than done, but hopefully you're noticing your thoughts and emotions if you're in this stage and what you might be resisting. Or could you be more accepting of it as you go for your goals? Now in square two, like I said, you might feel more hopeful, but is there something you need to let go of, an identity that you've been holding on to as you move into this next phase? So when I'm working with high achievers, I want to point this out. It's really hard for them to be in this phase as they're used to doing and working hard. So just exploring, let's say, career options, that takes patience and trust. But they'll want the answers right away. If I start working with you, they're like, okay, I need to start getting my resume out there. I'm like, but you might not even like your job. Let's focus on what you want that new job to be. And they'll end up working against themselves. And they're not taking that time to explore. But if you could relax into this phase of dreaming and scheming, you can make more progress. I know I took the time to take a lot of courses in this phase and be open to how my path would unfold. So I was this was a while ago, decades ago, I was taking these interior design classes. I was actually doing pretty well in them, but that's when I realized it wasn't right for me. The professor showed up one day and I was showing him my assignment and he said, oh, you just need to do this one thing to finish the project. And he said, just look in your interior design magazines or think about one of your home remake shows. And I realized that I never watched those shows. I didn't have those magazines at home. So just because I could draw or be creative, it didn't mean I should be an interior designer. So I let go of that dream, but it was really helpful to explore it so I could really let it go and not have any regrets, wondering what if I would have pursued it. So now when you go to square three, I'd say this would be the toughest square to be in, even though I'm a hard worker. And back in the day, I used to be very comfortable with overfunctioning. But I thought the affirmation here said it perfectly, which was, this is much worse than I expected, and that's okay. But if you're aware of it, can you lean into it? I was in this phase during the recession back in the day, and when I started my coaching business, and I was really exhausted a lot and overwhelmed working with my advertising job during the day and building my business at night. But knowing I was in this stage could have been much more helpful. And last, and we'll wrap up soon here, is having this, if you're in this phase, this one's the one I think is the most uncomfortable if you're a high achiever, right? Because you might want to be active and it's tough to enjoy yourself. So when I was in this stage, I think I shared earlier, I was uncomfortable because my business was going well. My family was healthy. I had great friends. I had built these systems and processes in my workday and in my personal life so it could flow. I had taken steps to evolve my business slowly, and it was time to reap the benefits. But if I was being honest, at the time I thought I should be doing something more. It's like we think that suffering is a must. And I really could have just enjoyed it more, remembering that small moves are okay. I don't have to make the big leaps. The good news is I finally did take some time for myself. I settled into this phase, and that was really helpful because when the next catalytic event happened, I needed to be rested and ready for it. So with awareness, you can channel your energy in the right places, right? And instead of worrying about like, I should be doing more, you can put your focus on building yourself up and your energy. So as we're wrapping up, and if anyone has anything to share, I'd just love to hear, because I know the season of life thing could be interesting, but you know how we ended yesterday, considering your priorities and discussing who you want to be. And today we're discussing how you want to feel. And if it's that calm, directed, focused person, I hope you can see how accepting where you are in life can support you. And to create that path forward that fits your life and allows you to be more intentional, let's remember you want to understand the season of life and acknowledge that your goals and the strategies you're going for, they need to evolve as your life evolves, as you go through the cycles. And let's let go of what no longer serves you. So those thoughts or those patterns, that insecure overachiever. And hopefully this can all help you be more present. Because when you're aligning your actions with your current needs and desires, that's when you're going to feel genuinely fulfilled. So with this context in mind, let's revisit your goals. And this is the last thing I promise. A couple more slides, I promise we're done. You'll want to get your list of goals from yesterday if you went through the wheel of life. If you haven't, it's just basically, hey, are these goals that I prioritize, are the life areas I prioritized in my life plan matrix, are they still true for me? And as you review your list of goals or your life plan matrix, I hope noting that the season of life you're in is a reminder that you and your truth need to be included in your path. So with that said, yeah, I'm just curious, and if we can always talk about this tomorrow, but I am curious, did any new insights come up after seeing the season of life exercise, or did it reinforce it? Because that can be really helpful too, right? Like, oh, I am in square three. This feels really hard. Thank goodness there's a reason to believe it.
For some reason, in the many times that you have shown me the 4-box thing, I never looked at the ways to get through it. I always looked at the symptoms. I never looked at, okay,
Right.
just it's almost like I visually almost even separated them. It didn't even give me, I didn't think, oh, there's a transition in between them. Like the arrows really mean stuff. And a lot of it is being okay with not everything being perfect.
Yes, that's the key.
And I want
Mhm.
deep down, I'm trying to make the transition perfect. And I'm trying to make the transition look a certain way. Yeah.
Yes, I will be
It's like,
perfect. It will be perfect.
why not I haven't looked at the how do you treat or get through it.
And to give yourself some credit, it takes time. I think, as you know, I think we've joked, I have one client who jokes, it takes 2.5 years to have, something in a concept really integrate. I think it takes time to just recognize, like, oh my gosh, there's these different life stages, and I might be in a one, and it's helpful for me to know that. So even though you kept seeing that, I don't know if you were ready to be like, wait, how do I flow to the next one? Does that make sense? Yeah. And then I see, Kim, yeah, that how to survive really resonated with me. Yes, that's why I really wanted people. I was telling a lot of people, this is the one night I want you to come, but then we give you other tools for the next several nights. So hopefully you keep showing up because you have great context now. Sharon, it looks like you're going to share something.
Yeah, just really quick. I appreciated that you said it's not necessarily sequential and you might go back and forth between, because I definitely felt last year that I was in number one, and now I still feel like I'm kind of going back and forth between 2 and 3, and that was really helpful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Oh no, I know. And it's from doing this with a group of people, I'm hearing more and more, right? The other thing I heard from a college friend was, she said she noticed that she was in one season for her personal life and a different season for her professional life. I was like, oh, that makes sense, because she has kids and she's going through a challenging time with the kid. So it's just interesting, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And what I hope, thank you for sharing, both of you. What I hope you can see is that, gosh, with acceptance, it just feels so darn good, right? That it's validating. Oh my goodness. What if I just accepted this and I stopped working against myself and the flow of my life? What if I just gave myself some space to explore and try things out if I'm in that square? So again, I go deeper with clients on how to thrive in each of these areas, but I wanted to at least start with recognizing where you are so you can move into the acceptance around it. So Siobhan, I think that was a perfect example, right? Like, hey, I've seen this. Now I could really dive into it. In fact, if we go back to the map I think I shared this yesterday, where, I help people go from this kind of harried life, chasing after what they want or wondering what they want. And knowing yourself is important. And that's what we're going to keep going into the next few days, is diving deeper onto who you are, what you want, what's important for you. But we need to also step into this accepting yourself and your situation and understanding why you operate the way you do, right? If I'm this insecure overachiever, oh, now I could see that. If I have these life cycles, that really helps. So we're going to keep moving toward accepting yourself and beyond. But again, I hope that you can see accepting where you are in a cycle will actually help you get unstuck, or I'm going to say more motivated, right? So you can move forward. It's energizing. So again, hope you feel like you can see accepting yourself allows you to show up as your true self. And it also actually helps you accept other people. And just knowing yourself isn't enough to make the bigger shifts in your life, okay? So I know this can be a lot of information to take in. So I just want to invite you that if you need to, please give me a call. I'll send up a link in the replay tonight email. If you want to set up a time to talk about what's coming up, feel free, because I know this is a lot. But we can talk about how to connect the dots with all of this information and create a path that's right for you and that feels good. And as for tomorrow, we're going to begin clarifying a vision for your life by connecting with your highest self. It's an exercise people really love, so I'm excited to share it with you. That is it for today. So good to see you. Any questions before we hop off? No?
Mike, tell your dog I love him or her.
Yeah, once you brought up the play like a dog, she decided it was time to jump up here. She was pretty
Yes.
quiet until then.
She's like, they
Thank
must be talking about me.
Yeah, right. So then she started licking my head.
Hmm?
But
All
no,
right,
thank you
great.
very much. It's really good.
Thank
Appreciate
you
that.
all. Great to see you. Bye-bye.